That's just for video synchronization. Oh, this is, I feel like I'm
You want me to try this?
What's that? It doesn't pull down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is truly a technology professional experience today. The one thing they're like, no, the blinds aren't going to break. Why would the blinds break? And then the blinds are broken. Anyways, so how many people here are new? How many have never come to one of these before? No, cool. Quite a few people. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, I'm known as Eli the Computer Guy. I've been doing technology since 1996, been doing tech education on YouTube since 2009. Basically, I opened a little classroom over here in Hash 2.0 back in February, and so we do a lot of in-person classes and that type of thing. Basically decided to do these types of events for two reasons. One is in our world, we get so hyper-focused on education, we forget to teach people how to actually get jobs and what they get paid for. And the experience that I always talk about is I had one of my students who was like, Eli, I have a master's degree in IT, I have my Security Plus, I have this, that, and the other thing. What do I need to do before I can get a job? And I was like, what are you talking about? Go get a job. But it's like this weird thing in our modern world where we're so focused on education, we forget to tell people how to actually go out there and do what it is that we do for a living. So that's the first reason that I do this. And the second reason is I came from the Baltimore area before this, and we had a very good tech community up there. And it was a very tight-knit tech community. We liked each other, we hated each other, people knew everybody, everything going on. One of the interesting things with Asheville is we have a lot of technology businesses. So we have ISPs and MSPs and a lot of people doing technology work. Our community isn't actually that great. Like knowing who's doing what, who you should talk to, who's hiring and that type of thing. And so I think this is our 6th or 7th one of these. And one of the ideas is to get CEOs of MSPs, ISPs, CTO talking about cybersecurity and talking about what people are doing in this area so that in the future, when you're thinking about cybersecurity, you're thinking about MSP, you're thinking about, oh, I need to talk to somebody about whatever. You can go, oh, a few months ago, I saw somebody, let me see if I can go and get them a cup of coffee. So basically trying to help build the community here. So that's about it. Fuck, man, this is just one of the, I just feel like a technology professional right now. So anyways, if Kyle Offenback would like to come up, he is the CTO of Epsilon. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I think you're in a good position. Anyone grab a seat? Oh.
How's it going?
Man, press the power button, man.
How's it going?
Nope. Holding the power button. Well,
How's it going?
So this is very important. So think about. Oh my God, it's one of those days. It's truly one of those days. Stay. So it's kind of like an ice cream cone that you don't actually want to eat. So you've got to have the microphone close to your mouth, but like not in your mouth. So
not in it.
So this is getting recorded. So yeah, we had one of our guests, and I wasn't thinking about it because I could hear him very well, and he had the microphone down here the entire time, and then the audio for the video was a complete and utter disaster. So make sure to keep your microphone up here.
Perfect.
Yeah. So so Kyle Offenback, CTO of Epsilon. So this is the first question. Is going to be the most important question that you're going to answer tonight. And I want you to know this video is going to go up on the YouTube. And if you give the wrong answer, your entire career is going to get canceled.
Well, actually, the easiest way to get the correct answer is by posting the wrong answer on the internet, because everyone wants to prove you wrong. So that's rule number one when you want to learn something, like how do I do something? Don't ask, just post the wrong answer. You'll get the right one quickly.
There you go. Well, here's the thing. Here's the question, though. What is the right answer here? So what is your daily driver? What is the main computer that you use day in, day out?
Oh, I'm a Linux guy.
You're on Linux?
Yeah, I'm on Linux day in and day out. I have Arch that I personally built myself that I run on. I've actually modded everything about my Mac as well. It's more Linux than it is Mac now at this point. I live by my dot files.
There you go. So does that allow you to do all of the productivity? So obviously for cybersecurity and things it does, but like productivity, email, writing reports, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, email, even gaming now. Got it working pretty much 98% of the games that I play. It works perfect, in fact sometimes better. But the other big thing about it is, so .NET, right? Microsoft, big there, right? if you develop something on .NET Core, which works on Linux and or Mac, it will work on Windows. But not everything you develop from an application point of view on Windows works on those because they might not be using, the latest versions. .NET Core for Linux isn't, and Mac is not as, technically doesn't have everything functional that you'd get if you were on Microsoft. And therefore you know that it works across all platforms if developed on Linux.
Ah, there you go. And then as far as the company goes, so with Epsilon, do your employees use Linux or are they stuck in Windows world?
It's a little bit of all three. It depends. We're a little bit more flexible because pretty much all of our, like a lot of the CI/CD that we work and build on and all the automation that we build on is from a Linux first, then it works within Microsoft as well. So they can use Microsoft products and laptops if they'd like to.
Okay. Okay, so with you, so you are a CTO. So then what actually is a CTO at a corporation, especially like with Epsilon?
Okay, so typically we need to understand the technology world out there in its entirety. We have to do the majority of the research. We have to plan out that research. We have to look at our teams and understand their knowledge and their capabilities from a kind of a business process point of view and be able to take the tools that they may use or what kind of functions that those tools offer to improve their day-to-day job and how can it actually bring the efficiency so that they can actually get the work done more accurately. So it's a lot of researching the capability of a tool and the security of the data that it's going to maintain or manage. So it's a lot of that.
So what does your actual job look like? So I just finished reading the biography of Elon Musk, which was interesting. And so he was like moving server racks and that kind of crap around. Do you actually still deal with servers and racking anymore?
Oh, occasionally, yeah, even at my house. For a lot of the labs that I build, sometimes you just got to do it, right? You want to do a certain type of lab, you need a certain type of power, especially when it comes to big data. You've got to build out the lab yourself. And I'm not scared of doing that. I mean, just because I have a C in front of my job title doesn't mean that I'm not scared to get out there and be like, all right, team, we're going to build out a new lab that we need to have running so that we can learn together and understand the capabilities of it so we can also secure it.
And then, so what's the difference between then a CTO and a CIO?
CIO is more about the operations of, I would say, CIO I find is typically more about maintaining and managing the operations of what's on production. Whereas the CTO is about creating and developing the business processes of tomorrow. A lot of application developers know about the DevSecOps process or lifecycle, right? Development or DevOps as it also is known as, but now with DevSecOps incorporating security to the left and putting it as well as everything else during your planning phase. The dev side, I would say, is more the realm of the CTO. The ops side is more the CIO, right? The CTO is going to develop how operations are going to work tomorrow. The CIO is managing operations of today, right? Because we're always about the R&D. The CTOs are looking at the research and development of, again, the tools we're going to use that are built by other third-party companies or the solutions our team develops internally. And so by making sure we know how it works, we can work with our partner, the CIO, our partner in crime, if you will. We work hand in hand with them to say, hey, this solution's ready to go. We feel we have the confidence that this is going to be how your team's going to work efficiently. And then typically through like the change board, the CCB or change control board or the change advisory board, that's where the two of us will, or more in some cases, will collaborate, talk, and look and review at the risk of the solution. And then the CIO accepts that risk and then incorporates it into production on ops.
So you guys have a CTO and a CIO?
Currently, the CIO in our case is a multiple of people, collaborative, more than an individual slot at the moment. And that's partially because the majority of the customers that we work with, they actually have a CIO. But those organizations don't want to do the research and development. They would rather, essentially get an external party to do the research and development for them. And so on a daily basis, I'm working with multiple different CIOs for different companies where I'm the CTO technically of Epsilon, but I'm their consultant CTO, essentially. So then we help develop their operations of tomorrow and get it to the CCB and get it approved and so they can understand the risk as well. And they can accept that risk and put it into production.
Okay, that's interesting. So when we're talking about Epsilon, then, so you're a managed service provider?
Yes, we are.
Seem very questioning, like, well, like,
So we have different departments. Within Epsilon, we do have a managed service provider department that helps a lot of the commercial customers that we deal with. But we also do consultant work, especially when it comes to compliance or security. Or even do things like red team engagements or forensics analysis in certain situations when it comes to cybersecurity. We have customers where it's not, don't think of it as much as staff augmentation as much as it is making sure that they have 40 hours a week of consultant, experts, SMEs at the site that they have there, especially when it comes to our government customers. The government, technically, from a management point of view, are the employees. The C-level people there are government. The managers of the team are government, and then we provide the contractors that actually do the work and carry out the plans, et cetera. And in those situations, like I said, I'm typically the consultant when it comes to like the solution architect point of view, the enterprise architect. They'll have me involved in those meetings from a help us build the solution, and then our staff with their managers executes and delivers and integrates it into their environment.
So are you mostly doing like monthly services, like you're on contract, or are you just doing projects too?
Both actually. And I wouldn't even say the contracts are monthly. So some of our customers, our government customers, we have 10-year contracts. It's a
10-year?
10 full year contract. For example, we actually safeguard the cybersecurity. We do all the cybersecurity and the IT for half of the nation's electrical grid, from Colorado all the way out to California, at the top level. Like that's one of our main pieces that we do. So that one is a long contract. That's many years, because when you have something of that scale, you can't change the people out on a monthly basis, right? All the institutional knowledge won't be transferred in quick enough. And on top of that, there's no retaining of knowledge. If you have professional services that come in to integrate, like say a tool like Splunk or any other Active Directory and things like that, they're only there for a short engagement to install a product and then leave. But we're actually there to actually do the operations as well. Like we're the analysts, we're the technicians as well. So once it's installed, which we perform, we also perform the actual operations, and then we provide the monthly reports to the customer to show how it's being. So it's much like a managed service provider, but in the difference is, instead of us owning that department, that customer still owns that department. It's a more of a, I guess you can think of it as like verbiage versus in practice, right?
Fair enough. So if you're talking about dealing with the whole electrical grid, so how big is Epsilon? Like how many employees do you have?
Right now we're about 500 people.
Holy crap. I honestly did not know. Wow.
And we're continuing to grow. We have a lot more. It's looking like we're about to onboard, I would say, probably another 200 with one of the recent customer meetings we got. So we're massively growing. We've, since what? It would be 4 years ago now, we've almost grew in 10 times larger.
In 4 years?
In 4 years.
What is, so where do you get the money from? How do you make that much money?
I'll be honest, so that's actually one thing I will say I really like about the company. It's not about making money. The money that we made, we're putting and investing back into getting more people, getting them training, getting more shops open. We have more SOCs opening. So it's actually investing it back into the company, which then is creating growth, right? Because instead of us trying to, like the people, those original 50 people before we were 500, it's not about us trying to make more and more money. It's about the actual mission. Most of us are military people, so it's always been about the mission of providing good, secure, and high confidence in the data that we do for IT. Pretty much every leader that we have has a military background of some sort, me being Air Force.
So, but like, what's the driver? What's a 10x driver of growth, or is it just everything?
So it's more in the government world. There's a kind of a ladder. You have to be able to have so many years of experience as a certain type of contractor, especially when it comes to government work. Once you've been able to prove that, and you've actually got good performance evaluations where the government recognizes you, in this case we had 5 out of 5, we got perfect scores. Once you get enough of that, you can actually get onto contracts that are higher and go after work where the government's looking, and the customers are looking for higher people. But much like getting any job, right? Anybody who's going to go put their resume in, they need to show validation. They need to show the credentials to verify who they are, what they're capable of doing is there. This is much like that. We have to, as a company, be able to show that accreditation, be able to show that the validity of our statements, that when we say we can do something, we can do it.
So how long has Epsilon been around for then?
So Epsilon is now, 20 years, Matt?
2009.
Yeah, 2009. So it's coming up.
So 13 years?
Yeah, so 13 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So there were 50 employees, then you've gone 10x in 4 years. Now you're hiring 200 more. Was there a tipping point for the CEO or the company where they decided to go for it, or was it just simply doors happen open up?
There was a certain platform that we wanted to be able to go on that needed certain members that had certain types of qualifications, and I was the one person that was like the tipping piece. Like I had the qualifications. I had like, say for example, OSCP, things like that from Cali for pen testing and other certifications, and the knowledge and the capability to be able to present the argument, basically like be able to say, hey, Epsilon should be on this platform to be able to go after these type of contract work. That got approved after we did 2 months of, I had to write and prove it and then get it edited and everything. We submitted it and it got reviewed and approved, and then we had to go in front of a board. And that was one of the biggest, if a resume, or like not a resume, but an interview is hard, this was an interview for an entire company for all of every single member that, every employee that we had. Essentially was, I was interviewed in terms of, it was pretty much a whole day of grueling questions in terms of making sure I had the correct answer that they were looking for in terms of, if we give you this type of access and management responsibility, is your company going to be able to perform and deliver on this? And we passed. So not long after that, I would say it was about 4 or 5 months later, we landed our first big contract, which was game-changing, especially for recruiting. Recruiting does not, they do, I don't envy them, because that couple weeks when we first got our big contract, we didn't realize how much work it was going to be for recruiting individuals because of all the interviewing, scheduling, and my hats are off to them. They did an amazing job. Our recruiting team was awesome. They helped schedule everything out. Even though they might not be doing the technical interviews, I was one of them that was doing a lot of them. Having to go through 250 interviews is hard doing the interview, but it's just as hard doing the scheduling. So that was a lesson learned.
So were you back with the first 50? Were you there 4 years ago?
Yeah.
So how have you felt? So how long have you been CTO then?
I've been CTO now for 3 years with the company. Yep.
So how have you felt the growth has gone? So basically you started as CTO, let's say you got 150 employees, you're now at 500, you're about to be to 700. Like, it's just like, yeah, you just exponentially scale like a server does? Or are you like, what the hell have I gotten myself into?
I wish it was a lot like containerization, where you can be like, oh, there's a new Docker container, just, put it on the stack, blue-green deployment, we're good, right? For some, it wasn't, they didn't feel the difference. In fact, there was people when we were 50 that thought we were a big company because we were in the government world already. They would get hired on and they were like, oh, I didn't know that the company's this small, because we were a small business at the time. For me, it was a lot. I originally had 5 people under me where we do lunch and learns, we do brown bag sessions, I do these things periodically, and then those classes grew from 5 people to, on a daily basis, now I'm engaging with 50 plus people on certain sets. Not the same 50 plus people, but like Monday I'll have a scheduled out lab session for 50 people for one customer, and then 50 people for another customer, and then 50 people for another. So that grew a lot, and having to interface with them and make sure their questions are answered, because even if, in a room like, even like a room like this, you'll have people from junior to senior, and the content, to have someone absorb the content is one thing, but have it relatable is another. And brown bag sessions, at least the ones we try to do in this point of view is meant for a wider audience. That was challenging because I get questions as easy as what is Ansible? Like just what is Ansible? We're doing this. And I get the same class, the same people like, oh, inside of a role, how do I get a template and how can I get Ansible to call Panda? We're talking very technical questions. And so the scope of these are pretty wide at times. That was a lot to take on. And I feel like we successfully did it. We've gotten through it. We've got a lot of lessons learned through there. So yeah, but that was, so for some, it was a lot to take on. And for some, I think it didn't feel, they didn't feel it, right? It wasn't, they didn't take any more people as a manager. But it didn't say, I'm not trying to infer that their time spent or what they do is less value. We could not be this successful even for the people that are junior level. And so every time I even get to talk with the junior people, which is on a daily basis through their bound brag sessions, I love it because I see where their eyes are. I see their passion. I see, sparks coming in their head going, oh, what if we did this and things like that. And it's a good feedback loop to see where, tomorrow is going to be and be able to think, wait a minute, how do I answer that question better tomorrow? So, yeah.
So, and with the growth you're going through, like where do you go to for support? Like, do you go to college? Is there some like CTO support program where you all drink beer and talk about like, because they're like people don't think about the executive level. There's a lot of just basic skills you have to know as an executive. And time management. Like time management when you've got 50 employees is different than time management at 500 employees. How do you figure that out as you're growing so quickly?
Some of it you have to be okay with just letting go. I'm gonna rip that Band-Aid off right now. There are some things that you are not gonna get accomplished. There are some projects that are too low a priority for you that you just have to say, I can't do that. That needs to go to a lower level, individual. And that's hard for a lot of people. And that's true across all of management, right? As you progress in your career, a senior, like for example, a senior level person of Active Directory knows how to create an account, a user account or an admin account. They know how to do it. Is it really worth their time as a professional to continue making new admin accounts? Or should they have the support that they need with a junior level person that they can delegate that task out to, right? That was the big kicker. And as it went up more and more and more, that is the harder part to realize and say, wait a minute, this might not be something I should be working on right now, right? The priority and being clear and quick to realize that. That was a big one. The other part of it, the skills, is there's a difference between having a job and having a passion. So when you ask, like, are you still racking servers? No joke, yes. At the house, I run Ansible. My Palo Alto Networks firewall, at my house, I run that playbook. I actually set up the CI/CD for that in my GitHub project. I still do the GitHub piece for it. I still maintain that project. My wife is also into IT. She does my PRs. So like everything you're used to hearing at work, do a PR review. CI/CD, all that. I do that at the house because I like doing it. No joke, I set up a Dell R630 in my living room, connected it and everything with my Palo Alto firewall in the middle of the living room while I'm watching TV just to do a lab over a weekend. And set up and deploy. I had, I had Windows servers in there. I set up, not a humble thing for you is I deployed following some of your Active Directory videos as well. I had that on as well as I was reviewing some of the content that's out there to what content can I give to individuals in these brown bag sessions as well for follow-up material. While I was building that, I was watching that on my TV. Kid you not. And so I set up my R630. I deployed it, set up a Palo Alto Networks PA220. All on a little half rack I bought off Amazon in my living room. And when I was done, I shut it down and wheeled it off into a room, into a closet, and then set the closet up. But like that's a big difference, from a CTO, a person who's supposed to do R&D. 8 hours a day is not enough. So it's a passion of mine.
So then, how big do you think Epsilon is going to get?
I've never thought of that. Like, I'm more like, if people find us valuable, that's great, right? If they find the services we provide trustworthy, that's awesome, and it will continue to grow naturally. At the end of the day, I'm wanting to make sure that the product we do is quality, and product in this case is the service, IT services as a whole, that there's quality there, right? People can trust it, and it's not just quality over time, right? But like, I want people to look at us and go, like, I like that. I guess it's the tactic or the strategy that we're kind of using is more, the growth will come naturally, especially have a good product. If you build it, they will come. So I've never really given that much thought. I could see us growing more and more and more because a lot of the, like, our name is getting out there, especially in the government world, in the sector. Like, they're hearing, oh, you did so well for this department, this 3-letter agency and that 3-letter agency. You're doing really well over here. Your CPARs are really good. Like, but that's the thing, is our focus is on the CPARs, like the actual quality of our work. And you know, we even, to this day, like, one of the big things we teach in the brown bag sessions is the relationship between a junior level person performing an IT service, a ticket, have you, or whatever, and how it relates to ISO in terms of standardizations, in terms of quality control for services across the whole board. So I know that doesn't maybe answer your question.
I think I wonder with that, like with your growth, do you have any red lines for when you know it'll be time for you to leave? Like, can you see this outgrowing you or your ability to keep up?
I hope not. Like I said, it's a passion. I love IT. I can go on stories in the fact of how to control your computer with an HDMI cable. Because even though most people control things with the OSI layers, right? At the hardware layer, an HDMI cable still sends 4 bits of data on its packet. So if you splice that and you man in the middle on there, you can control that 4 bits of data. The way the packets work are just like, you know, you send a start session and a close session. So however many packets I send with that 4 bits of data, I control if I'm in the man in the middle there. And so I love that stuff. It interests me, like how this stuff works. How does electricity work? Why is 5 volt the reason why a monitor understands that there's a loop now and it's connecting to your computer saying, hey, I'm connected to something. Let me turn on. I can get a signal. And then it sends its session, you know, and they're like, hey, let's do stuff. I like that, so I hope not.
but like for the CTO position, though, does it get, like, if you had 5,000 employees, would you get to such an executive level you're not playing with that anymore?
I don't think for a CTO. Yeah, because the question, like, I think at this point it's still getting with the team and understanding at a certain level the tools and their capabilities. A lot of times I'd get asked, why Ansible over Chef or Puppet? They're very similar. Because Ansible doesn't have to have an agent. It communicates with all the end systems in their native way of talking. Integrations is quicker. If I know how to use SSH, I can use Ansible because it uses SSH, or WMI with Windows, or API with SAS, PAS, and everything like that. But Puppet doesn't really work that way. You have to figure out a different way you can technically get it to work. But the point is Puppet and other platforms like that, they're all agent-based. So they have to have a system that you can install something in. But what if you're serverless? Where's your agent going? Ansible doesn't have that limitation. Knowing that helps build out that strategy for where should our company put our money when we want to train people. So that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. A lot of money goes back into the company, either through training or through opening up a new shop or opening up and hiring more people. Because if we can keep doing that and we understand the strategic vision, we're going to be one step ahead. And not one step ahead of the competitors, but one step ahead of making sure that our product's better quality tomorrow, right? The agile methodology, get it retrospective, get the feedback, make sure it's better, because there's nothing I'm going to create today that's going to be perfect and can't be iteratively improved upon tomorrow and maybe even an hour from now. So understanding that is more just how does it impact our strategic vision? So I don't think I'm going to be able to get away from, at least at some level, understanding the tools and technology that's out there and how it's talking. How does ChatGPT work into the mix? How does augmented reality? That's a huge one. Imagine walking into a data center with 1,000 server racks up and down, and you can literally have your glasses on, look at a system, and see the exact tickets that have been related to that system and everything that's on its inventory over the last 3 months. Big data, right? Having big data at your vision, at your glasses as AR, that's huge. That can help efficiency and service availability, or the confidentiality and the integrity. If I give you a wall of 50 different servers, and I ask you, how many of these ones have data at rest encryption? Can you tell me by just looking at them? No. But could you do that using big data analytic tools plus AR? Probably.
So then your real passion or whatever is like with cybersecurity, and that's one of the reasons you come here. So when somebody comes to Epsilon and you're thinking about purchasing cybersecurity services, like what are those? What do you actually offer? If they came to you with $1 million and said, we want the best of your cybersecurity, what would they actually be buying?
Okay, so that's a deep question. So it depends on the customer and it depends on their operations. Forensics is a field of cybersecurity, cyber forensics. But that's not the same thing as a cybersecurity operations center or a network security operations center or a team that does, say, static application security testing or dynamic application security testing. So with the service catalog, we break it essentially down to the OSI layer and say, what type of security are you looking for? Are you looking at more of a hardware security, physical security, right? Are you looking for more of a applications security? Are you looking more for someone who's maintaining your PKI, your ANA, your authentication and authorization, the business process that related to that? Are you actually looking for a cybersecurity operations center to do look at all the events and the behavior of everyone that's interacting with your IT assets? So it's partially kind of a session where we understand the customer's needs, and then we show them the services that we can provide, like vulnerability management, right? Something simple like that, all the way to something complex. Not every team comes to us and says, hey, I want another vulnerability management team. Some of them do come to us and say, we need instructors, or we need a forensics team, or we need a pen test team. So red teaming, things like that, and setting up those engagements. So it depends on the customer's wants and desires or need for what type of security they need in their department. And sometimes we've even consulted them in terms of that they come to us and say, I've heard the word cybersecurity, what does that mean? And then we can have a session with them, much like an architect does with a house. Right? What's the size of the lot you have? How many rooms do you have? What's the size of your family? Understanding who the customer is also helps us tune the correct services that's going to provide them the most value, bang for their buck, I guess you could say, and bring them that assurance so that they can understand the reports at the end of the month of what they're seeing. It's one thing to say, hey, here's a list of, you've got 13 high-risk vulnerabilities, and another thing to say, those high-risk 13 high-risk vulnerabilities, some of those are fixable. And here's the plan of what we recommend to actually work with your IT team to get these remediated in 2 weeks. Other C-level people that don't understand cybersecurity at least understand that if it's managing the risk, right, then they have the assurance that, okay, I can trust you. Because that's what it really comes down to.
So are they just coming to you like as a general cybersecurity service? Do you have something more along the lines of like product lines? So these are the 5 things that we offer and these are the tiers, or do they just come to you and say, we need stuff, what can you help us with?
So it's the government side, they actually posted out what they're looking for typically, and then we can review all of their different requirements and what their, in a loose way, the RACI model is in terms of the contract. And then we can actually propose, this is how we're going to do it with, here's our business plan, and here's our technical plan. And that's usually a very long and grueling writing process. And it's constant. Not fun, not technically, not the technical stuff that's fun. But then you have commercial customers, everything from a small shop. Hey, we just host a little tiny, a shop, and what we use the IT stuff we need is to be able to take a credit card and purchase, and then make sure that data is, they paid for and go on their day, like cashier stuff, right? And those type of things, we do network security, right? We're making sure that the data's encrypted, Data in transit is encrypted because obviously we need to protect confidential, all the financial information involved with those transactions. If there's a data store that has those type of transactions for history that needs to meet some kind of compliance level, we make sure that we look at what kind of data they have and essentially do a risk management framework, kind of like NIST, and apply it to it and go, hey, let's categorize your systems, let's select the security controls you need and go through that. So usually there's that type of engagement. The basic levels from a service catalog, vulnerability management program, that's a great example of one. Authorization and authentication management, your IDM, identity management, essentially. Both assets and users, that's a second. Being able to, pen test is its own, like, hey, we would like to have a red team engagement. That's its own kind of thing. So yes, there is those, so it's a big list though. So does that help answer?
Yeah, somewhat, yeah. And so a lot of people are talking about SOCs nowadays, the Security Operations Center. So let's say you walk into so I know network operations centers, you walk in, you see a whole bunch of, charts on the wall or whatever, screens. What are people actually looking for at a SOC? Like, so are SOCs going to be separate facilities, and is it separate physically? Is it separate logically? Is an operations center going to be doing a whole bunch of things? You just break it down into different components, or is a SOC over here and a NOC over there?
Ideally, the SOC is separate, all the way to where the data lives on your network. If you have IP phones, the subnet that those are related for your SOC should be separate. Because if I have compromised your production environment, I've probably compromised your IP phones. I can listen to your conversations. So when your SOC analysts are trying to stop my attack and stop me from doing what I'm doing, I'm listening to you and what you're doing. Oh, they're about to kill this session, or they're on to me on this account that I'm on. Okay, let me use this backup account I've already made. Or let me start phishing someone else. Or let me work on something, a different way to hide. Oh, they know that I'm on system A, like, oh, you're on Galaxy 5. Okay, well, let me get on Galaxy 7 because your SOC's attention is on Galaxy 5, that server, right? Whatever you name it. You can even Zeus, whatever your server names are, right? Hearing that gives me intel, right? And it allows me as an attacker to pivot and change my operations. What are my tactics? So we're talking all the way down to the systems need to be a different baseline. The network needs to be a different baseline. The IPs need to be on a different subnet. Like, all of it needs to be segmented, micro-segmented. Ideally, in a zero trust architecture world, everything is micro-segmented, right? Like, that's perfect. That's a lot of work, a lot of design, and a lot of effort. The first one should be your SOC. That should be separate. So their operations are protected against if the rest of the organization has been attacked. The other thing that's majorly different is, yes, I would also have the physical space be different than your NOC or your service desk. So let's just say, for example, this imaginary person that's standing right here, right, person A, they're under investigation. They're not under investigation because they've been doing something deliberately malicious. If they're able to walk into an office and see that their name is up there, they're going to change their actions. They're going to change their attitude. They're going to change what they're doing. Even just the fact that they know they're under investigation, they're going to try and be squeaky clean, right? And that's going to disrupt the analyst trying to analyze the baseline behavior of the interaction between IT assets and an individual. Not everything in cybersecurity is because of attackers or malicious intent. Non-compliant activity is also a cybersecurity thing. So there's also the cybersecurity training that goes involved with the SOC, making sure that they actually reach out to the other IT people. So one of the biggest things, and this is like step one, we walk into an office or like an organization, right? The first thing I do is I look at all the logs that are generated from all the different systems, and I look at how many IT admins are using non-attributable user accounts to access that system remotely, and then I correct that action. The reason why is not because an attacker is doing that right then, because I can't tell the difference in the logs if root is making a change and that person is, the person that's actually root at this moment is an attacker, is someone who's doing non-compliant and non-mature IT management, or an actual sysadmin that's doing work that was approved, reviewed, and it's understood that this needs to happen, right? There's no way to tell that in an SSH log. I see root, I see a source IP, and I see a destination IP. Without threat intel for the IP, if I know if it's bad, and if it's internal to internal, I have nothing to go off of. So now I have to then go back to a different system, investigate who did this, then go and and it could be a daisy chain. They went to a jump box, and they went to here, and all over the place. Now you're adding 5, 6, 7 hours of investigation to just find out who is making this change. We don't even know if it's an attacker or not. That right there is a simple way to make sure your environment's secure, because now when we see an alert that says root is remotely accessing a system to make changes, that's wrong. It's not wrong because it's an attacker, it's just wrong, right? And that is a cybersecurity alert. So that's, again, goes back to the security thing, is that the individual that was using that root account may not have malicious intent, but they do need more training. They need more, improve their thing. But they're gonna walk in and think, oh, well, cybersecurity, they're the police of IT. I'm in trouble, I'm gonna get fired. And then everything stops. They even stop actually doing productive work, and that's bad for an organization. So, yeah, long answer, but yes, keep it separate, ideally, because let these cybersecurity analysts be able to focus on an investigation before they, so that there's no interruption, there's nothing that skews the data, so that they can come to an accurate understanding of what's happening and make the correct recommendation of what should happen.
And then, so what's the difference then, or where is the line between a good system administrator, not a crappy system administrator, but like back in the day when I guess I went through some very good training. Basically, we were always taught, good sysadmin is good security is good sysadmin generally. So where is the line between just being a good sysadmin to cybersecurity? Like what's the differentiation?
Being able to, okay, so cybersecurity is more about understanding data. And it's very much like a data scientist. A cybersecurity person needs to understand how to read logs and create a story that's accurate, more like intelligence. Whereas an IT admin is making system configuration changes. A security analyst, what I look for in a security analyst is someone who could tell the exact story I just did, right? I want a security person to be able to come in and say 4625 win event. That's an authentication event. Someone authenticated 4624, right? Which one was successful and which one was not successful? But I want them to not just say, well, 4625 is this, 4624 is this, but they can also tell me who's the user account, what is the identity that's being used, what is the location that's being used, and then be able to correlate that event with other events of activity to say, okay, they authenticated, but what were they doing? Because it's one thing to be able to be a sysadmin and say, oh, well, the successful and unsuccessful 4624, 4625 win events is this. Or an open, SSH event, you're gonna see, auth, the actual process that gets ran is auth, and, with OpenSSH typically, and you'll see it, and you'll see the PID, and then you're gonna see the source, and then IP, dest IP, followed by the user, followed by the destination user. So root, or K Offenback, et cetera. And then right after that, you're also gonna see if I did sudo, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Be able to put all of those different events together and recreate the story of what's happening. Did I log into that system, enumerate all the different folders and files to try and find any sensitive information, and then use that information to pivot to a different user and then escalate up? And then you're gonna see the child processes attached to the parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole story. Cybersecurity people should be able to tell me the story. But a sysadmin should be able to tell me what configurations that they need to change based off of a team's decision of what is secure and not secure, or what is low risk or acceptable risk and not. Because there is not a single setting out there that is zero risk. There's nothing out there that's perfectly 100. The only way to do that is just completely turn it off, to get rid of the system, and not even have the physical, because there's still physical security. What if someone takes it, right? So that's the type of people I look for in cybersecurity analysts. They're analysts. They do have an IT background. They do understand and be able to tell, hey, I just saw remote root being a problem. One, we should teach people why they shouldn't do that. But there's another recommendation. just recommend that SSH be enabled to not allow root to SSH in the system to begin with, right? That is a recommendation. So now tell me the story that happened, tell me the potential outcomes, the risk, and then tell me your recommendations of what you want to do to fix this as an organization, as a business process, not just let's fix this one incident. Because just because you fix one incident doesn't mean you fix the problems. Again, that kind of gets cycled back into ITIL, right? The difference between a problem, right, and an incident. Problem being, how is it, root cause analysis and things like that. The root cause is the fact that you allow SSH to connect and be authorized and authenticated as root. Disable that as a sysadmin, we're good. We won't even let them happen. Now we just look for events where people are trying, right? That's less risky. Not perfect. There's still a way that they might be able to use a system account or something as a non-attributable access. But the point is you told me the story, you told me the risk, you told me recommendations and things like that. That's what I'm looking for in a security admin. Not so much a system admin. System admin just needs to know where those configurations need to be set, like where they would go set that.
So then what would a career for a cybersecurity person probably look like? Like how would they start and then move up to like your position, more or less?
So it depends. Network security is nothing like application security. And application security is nothing like pen testing. The world of how you start that is completely different. It's different challenges, things like that. An application security person, if a person's more into development, into knowing Java, .NET, etc., they need to know how to look and trace down through libraries and find what functions could be used for different things. Are any of them going to let me do, crash the stack? Basically take control of volatile memory and then be able to say, I'm going to use this code to jump me into someplace else to get a shell connection or something like that. That is nothing like network. In fact, to be honest, as a junior, I don't even expect you to know how layer 2 or layer 3 works. Right? It's nice to know that you know what an IP subnet is and stuff like that, but a function doesn't, right? Like application testers, as a developer, you're not trying to figure out, I need to know networking as an application developer. So a security individual who wants to get in the cybersecurity world, sometimes, like in a SOC, I usually build out a team. The way we build out SOCs is we have people that are focused on the higher end of the OSI model, and we have ones that are more specialized in the lower end. And then the tickets that are related to what are, to respectively, that's the work that they're going to be working on. So a network individual who understands subnets, who understands tagging and everything like that, understands the configurations of switches, because it goes back to the recommendation. Their background should be networking. And this is one of the challenges we face right now in cybersecurity as well, is 4 years of cybersecurity school gets you a bachelor's degree. But that teaches you the concepts of what is security. But it doesn't teach you the background of networking. It doesn't teach you the background of application development. So if you don't even know how something works in the correct way it should work, how could you tell me the story of when it's not correct or if it's insecure? That's a current challenge we face. And so people that are getting out of 4 years of just cybersecurity, they do have a tendency to have a problem being able to answer that question. Where is your specialization? Because they don't have one. And then you get into hacking and pen testing and that type of activity. And that's a different ballgame. You need to know everything. There's no way that you're going to be able to do a pen test without knowing every single layer in its entirety. You're going to, at some point, for at least the experience I've had, you're going to have to learn how to lockpick. You're going to have to learn how to open up doors that don't have locks. You're going to have to learn how to talk to people physically and portray a different attitude or a different person and be able to use social engineering to get access. At the same time, you need to know, okay, if you're on a certain subnet, let's just say 192.168.1.0/24, and you don't see a domain controller there, what does that mean? Then when you do see a domain controller, what does that mean? And how do you use that to your advantage? The difference between enumerating information, when information you can glean from enumeration, all the way to exploitation, knowing the MITRE attack framework, all of that stuff. That's where pen testing's a different ballgame. You need to know it all. And it's hard to get anyone that's just, out of college to be a good pen tester. I usually start them in more of an analyst role. And we do that a lot. We consult them a lot. We have interns that do a lot of awesome work. But the point is yeah, I would, you're gonna have to have some of that background before college of like, hey, I was 14 years old and doing something I shouldn't be doing, to have that experience to do a pen test at a young age. So
I think that's one of the interesting things too, is, so I would probably say 99% of my viewers all want to be pen testers for some reason. Is pen testing actually that lucrative? Like, don't get me wrong, I know we need some pen testers, but do we need as many as
no. No. Pen test is, if you want to make money in the IT world, get into automation. Get into learning CI/CD. Get into learning Ansible. The power you can do with automation and workflow development, that's where money is right now. Where that's killer money. Pen test is good money, but I think it's at that price range that most people will be like, that is good money, and it's fun, right? Like, I mean, come on, who doesn't want to be the be able to tell people, hey, I'm James Bond of the IT world, right? Like, people love that. There's a huge ego thing there. I mean, I've had that before, but that kind of goes back to the thing is sometimes it is a very lucrative position, not the most in IT. Right now, I would say automation is, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun, except when it's not. It's really weird. When it's fun, there's nothing more fun. When it's not fun, there's nothing more boring. No joke. It's half of your time is dealing with legal, because you can't just go to some place and go, I'm going to pen test you. Let me do this. Let's happen, right? You have a whole bunch of paperwork to do for legality. Because if you accidentally stumble on information that organization did not know, there's certain channels you have to go through. Like cat pictures, CP, cat pictures. You find cat pictures, there's a huge thing. You have to have stuff like that in writing of what's going to happen if there's any residual information that you discover that has legal things to that. You have to show them all that. It's a very big legal thing. There's a lot to that. That's boring. Lots of paperwork, lots of signing, lots of talking, not doing, boring. And then you get to do. And doing is awesome. It's so much fun.
So with that, we've got coming to the end of this stuff,
Yeah.
so with pen testing, so there's a lot of fields in technology where if you ask somebody how they wound up doing it, like, how do you become a YouTube star?
Yeah.
Well, in 2009, you set up a camera and you do something. And so, like with penetration testing, because this is a popular concept, can you decide to be a penetration tester? So like a sysadmin, you can go and get your MCSE or whatever, you can become one. Like, if you say, I want to be a pen tester, are you necessarily going to get to that position, or is there a lot of quirkiness to it?
You need to get into the community first. Heavily in the community like Black Hat, right? Like, we actually go to there's a difference between DEF CON, which Black Hat today is what DEF CON was, right? DEF CON has now become that platform for companies to kind of be at this convention. Black Hat, though, is different, right? The week before. Be on the forums, be on these capture the flag events. Get your name out there, right? It's probably not your real name. We get it. You'll be something like Synth or something. But get out there, get people to know you, right? It's a lot like networking on the YouTube piece, right? There's a community. You can't just pop a YouTube video unless, it's very rare, but you're not going to just pop. You need to mingle with the people. It's not like a normal IT job in that case. And so I can't speak from experience in terms of, did I go look to be a pen tester? And then, like, from a job perspective, I got found. I got sought after. I literally was doing .NET development and got a call one day and was like, you need to come to Vegas. You need to come join us. You need to come out here, and we need you on your team. This is what we want you for. So I can't say you can just go straight. Like, you can't like, it's really hard. You need to know the community. You need to know some way in right now because, and I think it's because that very fine line between legal and not legal. The things I did were always legal. I can honestly say I've never done anything illegal in terms when it comes to pen testing. It's always been on challenges. It's always been on capture the flags. It's been through safe measurements and through labs. And because of that, that had gotten me a good reputation, right? And from a personal perspective. So yeah, I would say it's hard, really hard.
And so then one of the final questions then. So with Epsilon, so if somebody sees you, goes, wow, I want to really work for you, but they're a noob, like what are the basic requirements to get like an entry-level job in cybersecurity for you? Like what's the base that you're looking for?
People who like logs. Yeah. Okay, so here's where I'm gonna geek out. Most people don't like logs. I've never met a sysadmin that can tell me, even a Linux sysadmin, I've asked so many people, even people who are like, oh, I've got 20 years of experience, and I'm like, where do your logs go in your folder structure? Just like the general location. And they can't answer var log. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't answer var. Where are your authentication logs if you're on Debian? Where are your authentication events if you're on a Windows system? Where are your authentication if you're on a Mac? Like, tell me where they're at. What's the difference between iOS and Mac OS? Where are the logs, right? From a sysadmin point of view, they should know, because that's where you troubleshoot. That's actually what's going to tell you what's wrong. Like, for example, raise your hand if you're in IT and you've ever had to deal with a website's SSL certificate expiring and having outages, right? How many people have done that, right? Guess what? The logs are literally going to say, if you go look at the log, it will say, try to create a handshake session, SSL certificate is expired. Like, literally. Put that in Splunk, search it, you're done. Put that in Elk, search it, you're done. Super simple. But people don't like doing it. So if you are wanting to get in and you have that type of passion and you like looking at logs, if you're the type of person that'll take World of Warcraft or EverQuest logs and then throw them into Splunk and try to create a damage meter or something like that, I want you, okay? That type of stuff, all right? It's all about logs. It's all about big data. It's really data analysts. That's how you're going to get in, because you're going to use that information to tell the story.
So it doesn't sound like cybersecurity is exciting as most people think.
That is true. Oh, God. Cybersecurity is both it seems to be the most desired positions, but also the most hated within the IT shop. Every single team I've ever done, once they hear that when I was part of cybersecurity, didn't want to do it. You're not an admin. You don't know IT. You're cyber. You're IA. No, IA is not cybersecurity. That's a department in cybersecurity. There's a difference between information assurance, who make policies, and then cybersecurity engineers and cybersecurity analysts. They're completely different people. That's like saying a police officer and a lawmaker are the same person. One is for policies and one is for enforcing. Two different. So, no, we're really hated across the organization. Like, it's the both. It's wild. It's wild.
Fair enough. Okay, so we've been going for a while. So do we have any questions from the audience? Anybody interested in?
Thanks a lot for being here. It's really, really interesting hearing everything you have to say. Do you have any wisdom that you've picked up over the years as far as using techniques that are very old for securing your systems? I know, as time goes on, we have lots of technological advancements, new ways of encrypting things and doing things, but I feel like there's also timeless lessons that maybe folks like you know about.
So most people know of CI/CD as a new capability, a new thing, especially within the application development world, right? You use GitHub to use CI/CD to build an application and deploy it. Why? Why not apply that same capability to old school stuff and old methodology and use the same old school techniques that have been around for 20 decades to secure a system? Use a runner, right? GitLab runner, GitHub runner, to create your actions in your CI/CD, to use SSH connections with SSH keys to be your jump server. But you are not jumping to a jump server and logging in. You're using a runner to do the actions for you with CI/CD, with Ansible. And the way you're creating the authenticated session to ensure that that's secure is through using SSH keys, which has been around for many, many, many years. It's one of the most secure ways right now to actually guarantee authentication from a correct source, because you're using PKI, good PKI, as long as you're using correct algorithms to encrypt keys and you're keeping up with that. But the methodology is the same, right? Create a public-private key pair, make sure your runners have access through that, through secret stores, and use your CI/CD to configure your systems for you instead of you doing it. Now you don't have to have 18 admins configuring a system. You only have to have one, the SSH runner, and then the admins are actually submitting their comp files to GitHub for a PR. But none of that's application development. I can take a Palo Alto Networks.conf file, like the HTML, export it, make the changes, submit that to GitHub, get a PR, and then once that new change is approved, the runner through PKI infrastructure using SSH keys can actually go and do that change for me. And now you've completely removed the need for people to have admin access. They can all be users in GitHub to do this review. That's minus 15 accounts of admins in this situation, with only one being an admin. And you're using CI/CD with a secret store, easy to rotate, and now you've reduced your risk. But it's still using the same knowledge and the capability that has been around for, how long has encryption been around? 443 and everything, how long has that been around? But it's the same PKI infrastructure. We don't need to, that doesn't need to get more and more complex. Does that help answer your question? Perfect, okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Really? No question. We have a CTO here. Well,
maybe just a follow-up question to that answer. So you're essentially saying you gain some security by simplifying things. You bring it down to, yeah, that's wonderful. But also, doesn't that make it easier for, if one person has access to that one thing that's like a single source of failure as well?
No, so with GitOps, this is true with Git, not GitLab, not GitHub. It inherits this capability because you have branch control. Now, these tools that you have also have the ability to say no one's allowed to make a change unless, no one's allowed to make a change unless multiple people have reviewed for branch control. This is why open source works really well when it comes to main branch and everything else, is because even you can make it so the main branch isn't controlled by one person, but a community. And for anything to change on that main branch, the community has to approve. And by adding that limitation right there, you've removed the single source of trust. And then with secret stores like HashiCorp's Vault, Ansible Vault, even GitHub has a secret store now that once you've uploaded the private key, you can never see the private key again. It's a one-time thing. No different than when you, say, use AWS, CloudFormation, to get you an API key for all your assets. It shows you it once. It even says, hey, you only have access this one time. Make sure you put it in your vault. So it's still all of that. It simplifies everything. But it still also adds in the fact that you've now removed the single source of failure when you have branch control. So you truly are taking all the advantages that we've developed over 20 years with Git, with application development, and now move it over into infrastructure. And so far I've seen that this is far more secure. Adding complexity adds the fact that there's more places that there's misconfiguration. And most hacks happen because of misconfiguration, right? Let's look at a lot of government systems. NIST is the governing factor for all of those systems. How many systems do you think have actually stigged their system, following the security implementation guide, and turned off the ability to have root remote to the system? And how many haven't actually set that? I know I'm using a previous example in the thing. There's so many systems out there that people forget to do that because they've added step after step after step. You add 18 steps, there's a higher risk of something accidentally happening. So simplify that, but make sure it's secure. And then now you have a method to make sure you've addressed the risks, and then you're accepting that risk. If you only want 2 people to review, do you want 5 people to review? Do you want 10? Right? Understanding the acceptance of that risk, because there's no way to remove all risk. And then simplify the piece and still use capabilities that have been around for 20 years. Does that help? Does that answer your questions? Thank you.
I'd love to get your personal opinion on ChatGPT and whether it's AI or if you have any other conflicting ideas around that.
I use ChatGPT every single day. Hands down, it is my favorite support I have, period. I do not think it's going to get rid of positions at all, especially in cybersecurity. It helps build a story that you people can universally understand. Not every single cybersecurity analyst knows how to write a story, but they know how to tell a story. They know the things that happened. They don't know how to write it in a really way that is understandable. So just use ChatGPT to make it and say, hey, I would like to make this readable by a C-level person or an executive or my boss. And it'll spit it right back out and say, oh yeah, here you go. And it's readable and it actually has content to it. Love ChatGPT on that. Also, it's a great way to template an Ansible playbook. All you have to do is say, hey, here's my business process. Like, these are the steps I do. I do this, this, and this, and this all includes, I want to do documentation in Word. Can you write an Ansible playbook that takes the infrastructure that I'm about to build, takes that font, like the comp file, converts it into YAML, and YAML gets converted into Word so that I have my documentation. Oh, can you also then take that Word document, make it Markdown, and then post it as the wiki page? So I don't have to go post it on the wiki page. Yeah, here's your playbook. Now I got my documentation automated based off of my actual configuration file that I'm about to do as a technical person, and I've got my SOP done because of the Word document, and heck, why not just throw in close the ticket for me too? Oh, it does that too. So I use it every single day, and I love it. I love it. So does that help answer your question? All right, thank you.
Thank you. How would you approach a senior stakeholder, like an IT director who has worked for a manufacturing company for the last 40 years in a data migration project where a lot of data from on-premises is moved to cloud? And this particular stakeholder has a lot of weight in the organization, but at the same time, the rest of the teams have agreed to the cloud migration. But he's the key stakeholder, and he has close ties with the founders of the company. He basically says, this is a very insecure type of system. I don't want to transfer data to cloud. I don't believe in it. So how would you approach this stakeholder?
No, reach out to us and we'll help. No, I'm going to try and, because that's a very complicated question, but I'm going to try and solidify in 20 seconds by hearing the question, but going. So number one, you're going to want to make sure the actual presentation layer of your system that will present the data is already set up, and that you've practiced your disaster recovery in terms of that system before you migrate the actual data. You're then going to want to do something like a blue-green deployment where you can actually then make sure that your DNS is said, hey, the servers that are in the cloud, right, that people are actually going to access the data from, I flip the switch, they're able to access it. I get that there isn't going to be any data, flip it back, right? Because you now have two live systems that have two different IPs. Just use DNS to switch between the two, right? That way you don't have to bring one down, because that's the biggest part about migration efforts is a lot of people plan out where they bring an entire system down, and then what if you need to bring it back up? We didn't think about that. Or, oh, well, it's going to take 2 hours of outage. DNS is like a 5-minute outage, but you never brought the service down. The service is still live at some IP address. People don't access that stuff with IP. Systems talk to IPs. So now you know that your systems are live. Then you have to get into your actual data migration piece where you're taking data that's, I'm going to assume it's unencrypted because you said it's insecure on-prem, and you're going to need to migrate that to the cloud. So now you're going to have to understand how you're going to encrypt that data once it's in the cloud as in the type of system that it's going to go into. So making sure that you plan out, once the data is there, how are we encrypting it? Then look at how you're going to do the data in motion encryption, making sure that the data as you're transferring it is encrypted on there. Then there's the whole financial management plan. Okay, so one, data ingestion on cloud, they ding you there. So understanding how much data, petabytes of data, right? We're talking lots of data. How much money is that going to be? Because part of the plan before you execute this is you need to know the total cost. The total cost of the actual IT people, the total cost of the systems, the data ingestion, the log setup, all the compliance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're starting to enter into the more complex piece, the actual data itself. I would not start migrating data unless you're, again, your presentation layer and your control layer and everything like that's already set up and you've done a blue-green deployment. That stuff is cheap, that stuff's easy to do. Make sure you've identified any risks associated with that, you've identified how you're gonna patch it, and you've addressed that, right? Because now it's much easier to go and say, hey, all of this risk has been managed, it's planned, and here's our plan of action for disaster recovery, right? And that should be pretty easy. Again, now you get into the data side, so there's that whole piece. But at that point, not to go on and on and on, but basically make sure you're understanding how your plan for data at rest encryption, data at motion encryption, and data exfiltration and data ingestion. Because again, data exfiltration from the site, you only have so much bandwidth, and data ingestion in terms of how much it's going to cost you to receive that data. And usually a lot of cloud vendors have a plan that they will make sure that they have professional services engage with you to do it as a single or a multi-stage job, and with a replicate, like basically a copy of that data. And they also have, because it's onboarding into their ecosystem, it's at a cost reduction, right? Mass data at first. That way you don't have to deal with it too much. But yeah, and then there's more to it. But is that giving you the kind of some of the guidelines that we follow? Yes. Okay, perfect.
Cool. Any more questions?
I have one.
Yes.
You mentioned you have corporate clients as well as government clients. I guess, what was the decision that went into targeting both? Because I'd imagine the sales cycle is a bit different, as well as the ongoing service for both is probably have different expectations, or more red tape, I guess. And number two, has your wife ever rejected a PR of yours?
Yes, she has. She's rejected many of my recommendations, especially when it comes to hosting different servers out of the house. She's like, no. Kyle, you've got enough Minecraft servers. We're not adding more people to come in. No, like that. So yeah, that's happened a lot. We have, the original kind of plan that we had was you can kind of think of two different departments. The leads and the C-level people for the government side and federal, and then the ones that were commercial. And we've kept them mostly separate when we were growing, because it was, again, earlier question was how did we deal with scale? There's no way to do, it would just been a much more complicated issue if those two departments were one, trying to manage all the different legalities, all the different compliance regulations and everything like that. So we kept them completely separate as two different departments under one company. Now that we've got it kind of solidified, now we're making that adjustment to say, okay, how do we bring these two teams together? How do we start standardizing our templates when it comes to PMO office? How do we standardize our training when it comes to project management, business operations planning, and everything like that? So we're bringing that in together. So it was kind of a two-step process. And essentially it was two different companies for a while.
Thanks.
No problem.
Which industries, from your point of view, are more on the forefront of cybersecurity, and which industries are kind of lagging, in terms of cybersecurity?
OT world by far is lagging the most. A lot of people don't understand how OT, operational technology, incorporates. And I'm talking things like the car industry, right? Things like that. They have all these manufacturing things that are built, and I kid you not, I can go not that far from here to some big car manufacturer and find Windows 7 and things like that installed running their entire network. Yeah, and it was not following good practices at all. Like, there's so much about it. I was just like, wow. And so the OT world, it's really, because a lot of times the OT world has developed certain automated systems that are so tuned and perfect, and they are working for the robotics, that they don't want to touch anything, right? They don't want to touch it. Whereas application development has gone way further in cybersecurity, right? We have SAST, we have DAST, we have security vulnerability scans in development happening in CI/CD. So as a person who's doing .NET coding, I can actually say, hey, I want to git, commit, and add all this stuff and then commit, and on commit, before it even gets to the external repository, the pre-commits are running things like looking for clear text passwords, looking for vulnerable known libraries that I'm using and everything like that, and gives me a report before I even pushed it. Like it hasn't even left my system. So that's security to the left, right? So I would say the industries that are dealing with software applications, they're leading the pack, but OT is way behind, and I mean way behind. And they need to update those systems. But I start seeing them now asking the right questions. Robotics is now, especially since Raspberry Pi has become so popular amongst hobbyists, right? Robotics is now becoming earlier. People are able to touch robotics sooner. They don't have to go through years as a professor to get into automated robotics. They can do it now with Raspberry Pi, with Adrenos and things like that, right? Like they can put everything together and do it. But that means that they also have the capability to use SIM tools like Splunk for free and see how do they integrate these systems together and start getting that data and then going, oh, I can see what's happening. Oh, wait a minute. Why did so-and-so touch my stuff and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so now you're talking about camera system, all that type of stuff. So OT world is behind. Software applications way ahead. Infrastructure, IT infrastructure, switch network devices, OSs, things like that. They're still more in the audit type of security, right? You create a baseline and then you audit it 6 months later. You could have been hacked the day after you deployed that, and you've been hacked for 5 months and 30 or 29 days, right? That's not continuous monitoring to me. That's just you're auditing what you did. Application world, though, is every single time a new patch is coming out, their CI/CD with Git hooks, with with Git ops, and everything like that, with version control and everything like that. They're like, any time a change is happening, there's a PR and people can review it, and it's checking and it's scanning, and they set all that up, and it's perfect. I love it. Migrating that into infrastructure is the next piece, and then migrating the OT world and getting them up to speed is going to be huge. But it's a lot of effort. But they are the ones lagging behind.
Anyway,
There are so many cybersecurity tools, right? And how do you consult different organizations which ones to use, for example, right? And that's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question, how do you make a comparative analysis among all those cybersecurity tools? Which are reliable? Do you maybe analyze the operations of the companies which are producing those tools? Or, whether they're reliable, trustworthy, etc.
So Gartner is one. Gartner does put a lot of different evaluations out there. But the first part I do is your cybersecurity using tools that no other department is using? That's the first thing you need. If the answer is yes, that's the first thing we need to fix. Because there's literally no difference between a SIM and a log monitoring tool. They're literally the same thing. Elk and Splunk, from a security, as a SIM, same thing. They're reading the exact same logs. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't get that a cybersecurity person wants to see DNS answers and queries to identify if there's something bad in there. They don't get something special, like a different event that says, here's the networks team DNS log, or we'll say the domain services DNS log, and here is cybersecurity's security event over here. That security event, if there is one, came from a correlated search that's based off of that DNS answer and that DNS query. So they still are reviewing those same exact logs. There's no difference. The reason why I'm saying that is, if you're able to take your cybersecurity tools like, their SIMs, and get the network team involved in enterprise monitoring and looking at their logs, and get the service desk and looking at their events as well, and get the application team and looking at their events, then you're getting more bang for your buck. You're paying $1 million for Splunk, and instead of one team in the organization getting value from it, you're getting 5 teams getting the same event, the same troubleshooting, the same root cause analysis that they need, the intel that they need, and you're getting more value from that single event that you're paying for, right? That's step one. So assess what tools is cybersecurity using that no other department is using, because you're not getting as much value as you could out of those systems. If you did that, then you're going to be busy for a bit because you're not going to go buy another tool, and you're not going to have 18 tools that people have to learn within one department, and now you're spending more and more and more money, right? So that's the first assessment I usually do, is how many different tools are only being used by one department. And in this case, because the scope was cybersecurity, how many of those cybersecurity tools that is only cybersecurity trained on, is only cybersecurity using and getting value from? And then the question is, could other departments glean information or value from this? I'll tell you what, Tenable, right? Most people only use Tenable for cybersecurity, but imagine if your CI/CD kicked off a Tenable scan when you tried to do an infrastructure change and your infrastructure team, your network, or your OS SMEs got the report immediately and didn't get it from cybersecurity. You think that they might make those changes then, and then when cybersecurity does a scan, it's already fixed, right? So even tools like Tenable could still be used by other departments. So that will now help you consolidate which tools provide the most value for your organization. And then you'll have a second list of tools that says these tools here are the ones that only cybersecurity uses. And now you can look at how much value your organization is getting from there, because as much as I love pen testing, not every single organization out there needs a Cali license. If your cybersecurity team does not do pen testing at all, don't pay for a Cali license just to answer the what if we did. Because what if you did means you paid for 5 years of licensing and didn't do any pen testing, and you're still paying for, right, thousands of dollars a year on that licensing for no value. So that's again, identify what tools are good for multi-department, because those ones you want to keep. You don't want to remove. And then have that list of what are the ones that only cybersecurity use, and then break it down in a Moscow method. Must have, should have, could have, won't have. Or you could say will have, as in someday in the future if we get to that point of maturity. But Moscow method, right? Now you've got a list that you can consolidate, save money, which also removes the fatigue and the exhaustion of having to learn a billion tools on that team, and allows them to focus and become better and more mature experts on the tools that they do use that does give your organization value. And it starts bridging those gaps between the multi-departments because they're now using the same tools in certain situations. Does that answer your two-part question? Perfect.
My question is related to his question, but what are those tools? Like, what are good red, blue / purple tools that small business can get access to and help themselves?
All right, so number one, pick a log enterprise monitoring tool. I don't want to advocate for third-party companies that, I have my personal favorites, but I would say just pick one that your team understands and is the best equipped to be able to adopt into their systems. You cannot make an analysis that is accurate without intel, i.e., people making decisions without looking at logs, as much as logs can be boring, they're not making the right decisions. If they are, they're guessing. And that is risky, that's high risk, right? If I can tell you with certainty, with evidence, right, that this event, this is what happened, and I can show that evidence because of logs that are not tampered with, then I know the decision I'm going to make. This was not malicious because this person works for us. They did have a ticket and they needed to make a configuration change. What they did was they used root to log into the system. That is not a non-risky behavior. That's high-risk behavior. Recommendation, make sure that they get training because our compliance, our acceptable use policy says you must use an attributable user account, right? All of that is supported by evidence with logs. If you don't have that, do not get a SOAR. I've seen places go spend millions of dollars on a SOAR product, right? And they don't even have log management down. They don't, it's like, okay, what is your tool going to analyze and create an automated decision when it has no intel? It doesn't have any information to make a decision off of, right? What flavor of ice cream do you want? You're probably gonna ask me, well, what flavors do you have? Instead of just being like, well, I want apricot. Yeah, I don't have apricot. Well, I want cookies and cream. Yeah, I don't have that either. you're eventually going to be like, okay, dude, can you just tell me what, I just have vanilla and chocolate. Oh, yeah, I would like chocolate, right? That gives you an accurate decision quicker because you have intel to go off of. It's that simple. So again, simplifying it, which we talked about earlier, and then making sure that you have visibility. The biggest challenge cybersecurity teams have is they do not have visibility of the assets that they're trying to protect. They have no idea what's happening. Worse, less, they don't even have an inventory list. Like their sheet is saying that there's 2,348 systems on the network. And then they go ask the infrastructure team, how many systems should be on this network? Well, I don't know. Well, do you have an inventory list? No, it's not updated. Okay, so is it 2,347? I don't know. Well, how many do you manage yourself? 100 plus. That's vague. Because one of those could be an attacker, right? Like it could be your organization's 2,346, not 47, and that one is a rogue device that someone's plugged into your, that you don't have network security on the port security, and I've connected it, through your RJ45, and now I can see and enumerate your system with Nmap and everything like that. So that's number one. Select a log monitoring tool. I do like Splunk. Splunk, for people who don't have not had familiarity with being able to really look at logs, I will say that Splunk has a free version, which is awesome because it allows you to start looking and understanding your logs. A lot of other tools out there don't. And that's what I like. Usually I gravitate towards tools that I can install. So it's not that I'm saying use Splunk. What I am saying is when you do assess tools, which you did ask, is how do you assess them? If I can actually get a trial account and I can read your documentation because you have it open source and I don't need an account, right? I don't have to be in the club to be able to read how your tool works. Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot. And there's companies out there that do that really well. The ones that actually Gartner rates as high security, they also don't worry that they're showing everything. They're usually showing like how their stuff works open source. They're usually printing out all of their admin guides available to the public without paying a license, right? So you can read how their stuff works, what their configurations are. I'm not scared that you can read how my thing works because I trust it works. It's not a bad product, right? That's the type of stuff I look for. So again, I'm not advocating for Splunk. I'm just using it as an example that it's one of those tools out there that they have all their guides out there, all their admin guides, their development guides, their code, and you can install a free version on your laptop and start looking at your logs. Even if it's World of Warcraft or EverQuest logs, you can still do it, and it's amazing. So that's usually where I start. The next tool, and this one's a lot of people are not going to be like, I don't think a lot of people will be like, whoa, VS Code. VS Code is amazing, okay? VS Code allows me to actually read and have color-coded things of the configuration files. If I can get a copy of your network or switch, I can now easily read and then also do regex to find out where certain configurations could be hardened by using a STIG and comparing it in there, right? I can also use VS Code to install plugins that allows me to get different types of functionalities. I can also use VS Code to have my console at the bottom as well if I do need to remote access to certain systems and run other things. Or if I want to run Nmap or NetScan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can use it all from VS Code. The other good part here about VS Code is if you and I want to work together and I've got Draw.io as an app, as a plugin into VS Code, which allows me to draw things just like Visio, right? I can actually set up a session with you and I. And when you move your mouse on your VS Code with Draw.io, it moves it on mine and I'm moving mine. We're working on a document collaboratively. If you're an IT infrastructure person and I'm a security person, we can literally be working on a document together with a connected VS Code session. Love that tool, right? Again, that one isn't a third-party tool that you have to pay for. It's just an app. It's a free one. So that one I will say, yes, VS Code. Okay. That one, it's not a licensing product that I'm advocating that you have to spend money on. That one's a free one. So that one. But yeah, that is powerful for a security team. But a lot of people don't understand the power of that. Then after you have a good SIM, then get a good vulnerability management tool. There's a lot out there that do vulnerability scans and things like that. And then after that, you're going to want something like an XDR. But that's XDR, like basically an extended detection response, EDR. endpoint detection and response, but extended XDR, meaning tools that are more than just the system, right? You can do SaaS, PaaS, things like that with these type of tools. And the reason why is why I put that a little bit further. It is going to give you huge security, no doubt about that. And the built-in tools and functionality that it's already detecting on, even if you don't have a log management tool and a way to search your logs, is going to give you great security. But your team's not mature enough yet. If they don't understand how things should be working, then they don't know how they shouldn't be working. If you can't identify what is good behavior, whitelisting, you shouldn't be building a blacklist. And EDR tools and XDR tools have a very powerful level of authorization on systems that they're installed. They essentially control the system. If you try to install an EDR on a Mac device, right? And there is two different types of Mac OS, by the way. There's organizational owned ones, and a lot of people don't know that, and they're trying to centrally IT manage Mac devices with personal owned licensing. That's just like getting a Windows Home edition and trying to manage it with the essentially, it's not going to work really well. But with Mac, because of the way that they built out their system and how things are actually containerized to some extent, you actually have to authorize the owner of the device. Meaning if it's a business-owned device, the business, and if it's a personal-owned device, even if they've registered, you as a business bought a personal licensed Mac, and you try to install an EDR tool on there, the person who registered it to their Mac ID has to approve of the EDR because the EDR gets complete control of the system. That is huge. There's huge risk there because that means that when security people make the wrong decision to block certain things, you get outages. And if they don't have good communication channels between the service desk is the ones that are dealing with the angry customers, right? The people that are calling and yelling at them, and your service desk people are leaving, and they have morale shot through the floor. And it's like, come on, right? The service desk people are your brothers and sisters of cybersecurity. Don't do something that blocks certain things without a good communication channel because you're literally throwing them under the bus, and you're going to make them hate their day at work. And they're going to go home angry and upset because they don't know what's happening because someone made a change that they don't know about because you used an EDR tool. So again, EDR tool gives you great levels of security protection in its capabilities. But it also has high risk because if people are not mature enough to use it, right, it's that. So again, I would say start with the logs because now you know what's happening and you can start coming up with the plans of what you would do. And then add the tools on there that allow you to do those operations. Don't just go buy security tools because you heard it's the next big thing that everyone's buying. So, is that any other the answers? Perfect.
Fair enough. Okay, so it's gotten pretty late. So the final thing, is there any final parting words you'd like to give folks about cybersecurity, Epsilon? I don't know.
Yes, so the closing thought that I have is, if you do have a security department, try to make and start bridging those gaps between IT departments and the security departments. And what I mean by that is actually look at your entire organization. If you went to your CIO and you said, hey, what is your service catalog? What are the services you provide? And they say, oh, we provide images on workstations. Try to define that in the sense of, if security is not in there, because if you build on an image, it should be, I built you an image that works, and I built you a system that's secure. Because the true definition of security, especially with CompTIA, confidentiality, integrity, and the last one, which people don't think is a security thing, availability. If availability is hampered, that's not security, okay? People think security is limiting availability. That is not true. It's giving the correct availability of the data and the system to the correct people, making sure it's confidential and integral. But you have to have availability. If there's no availability, you're not doing security. You're just doing something that's poorly and not mature. And come on, that's not good for anyone. You're making people mad. So if you go to the CIO and you ask them, what are your services? And they say, my service catalog says we do like imaging of workstations. If there's nowhere in there that says that it incorporates the cybersecurity team, that's what you got to do. You got to say, hey, this catalog item incorporates cybersecurity in some fashion. It either has a antivirus installed. It either has some type of incidents that get reported. It has something to do on auditing or reviews. How is this how is this workstation image incorporating cybersecurity? Because when there's an issue with, like I said earlier, when there's an incident that cybersecurity is involved with, they're going to impact your workstation team. They might make configuration changes that changes the baseline that your workstation team did. And now when it comes back to your workstation team, if someone's like, oh, this doesn't work, why is it not working? And that workstation person's like, dude, it worked when I gave it to you, it worked. What did you do to my system? What did you install? Now they're gonna be sitting there for days trying to fix, or they do what everyone does, just re-image it. Right? So I would say, look at your service catalog at the enterprise level, and then ask that question. Where was cybersecurity's input on how this service is being delivered? Because they are brothers and sisters to the service desk, just like the service desk is brothers and sisters to cyber. So that's my closing thought. Collaborate.
Cool, cool. Okay, well, it's good having you tonight.
Thank you.
And
I really liked it.
Yeah, good. So anybody that's been following along has been a member of my meetup. So I have a meetup called Silicon Dojo, again, for the education stuff. Digital Nomads, of course, is taking over Asheville. And so I'm a good business person, and when I see somebody else taking things over, I'm like, well, I'll jump onto their ship. So we have jumped onto the Digital Nomad ship. So if you're a member of Silicon Dojo and you still want to come to these events, become a member of Asheville Digital Nomads, and then these events are now only going to be under the Nomads going forward. So just keep that in mind. Happy to be part of Nomads now. So our pizza sponsor, of course, is ERC Broadband. So if you need fiber to the prim, remember who bought you really good pizza, because that's really what's important. And do remember with the pizza, it is kind of like government contract. The more of it you eat, the more you get. The less you eat, the less you get. So please go back and eat all the pizza so we get more next time. And yeah, it's been fun. So see you guys.